Writing a good story is hard. Making a good movie is hard. Transforming one into the other is even harder. Welcome to Adaptive Difficulty. This is a show where a couple of book lovers take on the challenge of adaptations. I'm Cameron, and with my friend Josh, we explore the difficult and sometimes bizarre choices that happen in the course of making an adaptation. This week, we're exploring the wonderful land of Oz and the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz, and the book by the same name by L. Frank Baum.
Hello, I'm Josh.
And I'm Cameron.
Minor correction to Cameron. The book's name is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
I have The Wizard of Oz.
Well, you were not reading the official Dover first edition facsimile, which must have it right.
And it's not must have it right.
Okay, I don't know Cameron's thoughts on this. We haven't pre-discussed it, but I have to start the conversation by heading off one thing, which is that I think if you read the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, you will take away the fact that it is not about the silver standard or economics.
I mean, I guess. I mean, like, it's just one of those ways you can read the book. The only, like, kind of analytical fact I know about the book, that, like, this was a way of reading it.
Yeah. And on its own, that doesn't bother me, but it just feels like one of those things that's become, like, if you want to seem learned, you, like, actually people that The Wizard of Oz is about the silver standard, when that's a reading that came out, like, 70 years after the book was released and 30 years after the movie existed, and does not have a lot of evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just kind of become ingrained in the pop culture where you're like, this is the thing I've heard. It's like everything to do with, I'm sorry, I had a massive brain fart. Everything to do with famous psychologist.
Freud.
That's what where, like, most of his stuff is, like, complete bullshit and unsupported by anything. But because he's kind of worked his way into the pop culture of things, that, like, everyone still kind of talks about it and brings him up.
Yeah, and there's some validity to bringing up Freud, because even if the actual psychology isn't true, people use those ideas to write fiction, so it makes sense to bring it up in the context of fiction still.
And I can understand that.
But anyway, I just wanted to start off combative.
What's your relationship?
Had you read this before?
No. So
Well,
I did not really read as a child, which is interesting. Oh, I mean, I did, but not the classics.
Had you seen the movie?
Oh, I love the movie.
Okay.
I mean, it's no Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
So I guess I'm at the same place. I hadn't read this as a child. I have read it before, but it was only like a year ago. I actually ran a old school D&D campaign set in, like, an Oz setting with my wife and her sister and brother. It's the book Oz by Andrew Kolb. Very good if anybody's interested in stuff like that. And then after that, I happened to find a copy of The Wizard of Oz at some used bookstore and read it pretty soon after, which was in, like, 2023. So I've read it before, but it's not like I read it as a kid and loved it or anything. I actually remember reading it as a kid and dropping it within, like, the first chapter, which is astounding because the first chapter is, like, 2 pages long, like all the other chapters. But
yeah, it's one of those things. Did you go see Wicked? The prequel?
I did see Wicked for, aforementioned wife's sister's birthday. She's a big Wizard of Oz and Ariana Grande fan, so we went for her birthday.
Was it everything she hoped for?
I think so. I didn't love it, but I think she did.
You can't say stuff like that, Josh. We'll get canceled.
Well, it's just like, I was watching the movie earlier, and I was watching a Blu-ray copy that I own, so I looked at a couple of the special features afterwards, including, like, the deleted scenes, which there's not a lot of because it's a movie from 1939 and they just like threw that shit in a fire most of the time. But there's like an extended take of the Scarecrow's song where a lot more of it is just like an unvoiced dance routine instead of a song that they cut. It's obvious why they cut it because it does slow things down a lot. But I was like, man, they deleted this from The Wizard of Oz and it's better than anything that ended up in Wicked.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, you know, this is a movie musical. And this is coming at a point where musicals are... I almost feel like movie musicals are kind of from this time period, are more kind of a showcase for people doing dancing than, like, actual, like... The songs are not as important as the dancing is.
Whereas the Scarecrow routine that I'm talking about reminded me a lot of, like, Make 'Em Laugh and Singing in the Rain, the Donald O'Connor bit. Like, it was very, like, comedic, but at the same time super impressive.
And I thought we've switched away from being more about dance to being more about singing over the past little bit. I think we've started to come back more towards the dancing.
Yeah. Well, like, I haven't seen it, but I know people love Spielberg's West Side Story for, like, bringing back the choreography and stuff.
Okay. So, let's return, I guess, to the book. And we can talk about kind of how the movie relates to it. Although, should we talk about the movie first, since most of us have seen the movie first before we read the book?
Well, I think we've gotten through our prior relationship to the book, so the only thing left to cover briefly is what we think of the book, having read it. You can go first, since I had an opinion before this time.
So I was very interested in kind of that kind of introduction part where he's talking about, I don't know if it's in your book, where he's talking about how this is a story that's not there to be like a moral tale. It's just kind of there to be fun.
Yeah.
And that, like, morals had ruined fairy tales for children.
Right. He specifically, for anyone who doesn't have that or didn't read it, he kind of says, let me see if I can find, the old-time fairy tale may now be classed as historical. The time has come for a series of new wonder tales in which the genie, dwarf, etc. are eliminated, together with all the horrible and blood-curdling incident devised by their authors to point a fearsome moral to each tale. Modern education includes morality, therefore the modern child seeks only entertainment and gladly dispenses with all disagreeable incident. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz was written solely to pleasure children of today. It aspires to being a modernized fairy tale in which wonderment and joy are retained and heartaches and nightmares left out.
Which is
so
interesting.
He's basically saying... Yeah.
I was going to say, it's interesting these, like, heartaches and nightmares are cut out, because this book is, like, weirdly dark in terms of, like, what happens in the book, I feel like. Or it's just like...
Yeah. The thing that always gets me is when the witch sends wolves after the party and the Tin Man has to behead 40 of them, one after the other. And then the witch is like, well, that didn't work, so now I'm going to send crows. And then the Scarecrow has to wring the neck of 40 crows, one after the other. And the last one are bees, which you don't think as much about.
But imagine how much fun it would be if they were
very gruesome.
If they were like, I'm sending 40 bees and only 40 bees. If they had actually put a specific number to it. But yeah, that's the part, like, when I was reading this, I was like, I was now imagining this being like a graphic novel or like a manga where, like, this is an epic fight scene of them going to town on just, like, destroying these creatures just left and right, and it's, like, super epic and everything. And it's, like, not really anything that I associate the film with, because I don't really associate the film with action in any way.
Yeah. Well, and it's not really even action in the book, because I think the thing that makes it still kind of lives up to what he's saying, because the book gives you, like, no detail. It's very fairy tale in how it tells the story, which is declarative sentence after declarative sentence, short declarative sentence, and so on. So, but yeah, it's like, if they had put 40 wolf decapitations in the movie, I mean, it wouldn't have even passed the Hays Code at the time, but the book is for children. So it's just...
That's why we need to get the Snyder cut of this film, Josh. We have to get it made.
But yeah, it was also always the two times I've read it, it's always surprising to me. And this, I have to compare it to the movie since that's so iconic. How little of it is at home in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very perfunctory in the book. Like, they get her out of there as fast as possible, and then when she gets home again, it's literally half a page.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like in the movie, we have Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which is like where Dorothy kind of expresses a desire to go see places and do things and not be in Kansas with, where her family doesn't seem to really take her seriously. She doesn't really like farm life from what you can tell from how she acts around it. She's got that horrible Mrs. Gulch who's always after her and her dog, who is iconic to me. But she has like an actual desire to like leave the place, whereas I think in the book it's a lot less like it's just this thing that happens to her. It's not like she's like actively desiring to go someplace.
Yeah, in the movie, there's kind of this whole overall moral of, and this time watching the movie, I kind of thought it was a little odd that the overall moral is like, you should not wish for things beyond your home. You should be content at home. In the book, she wants to go home again, but that's just kind of because that's where she's from and feels safe. And she doesn't necessarily have to learn to appreciate home. She just wants to get there.
She's also much younger in the book. She's like, I don't know if they ever an age, but I always imagine that she's like, at most like 10 years old. Whereas in the movie, she's, Judy Garland.
Yeah. Well, did your version have the illustrations?
Yeah.
So, she looks like...
she's short.
Maybe 7, and that would be pushing it. But the original intended actress for her was Shirley Temple. And so that would have been much more age accurate, because at the time, Shirley Temple was, still the toddler star or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never seen any Shirley Temple things.
The only Shirley Temple thing I've seen is the advertisement for the complete box set that used to be on TV.
I guess I have seen
all
that.
the time in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it played the song Animal Crackers in My Soup over the whole thing.
Okay. So I don't recall that part, but I do recall the box set.
Animal Crackers in My Soup.
Okay. It's all coming back to me, Josh. Stop. Oh, PTSD.
Okay, so I think we've officially broached into comparing the movie and book. Mm-hmm. So do we want to just go through it chronologically now?
I guess that's...
Or do we have any major themes we want to touch on?
That's a fair way of looking at it. We can... So, and I have a thing I want to talk about when I get to the Wizard, but other than that, I don't really have a whole lot to say to it. Or I have a lot to say, but I don't have anything that's like super, important. But
I feel like I have a couple major topics I want to get out in front of.
Well, I'll let you.
So the first is kind of what we were already touching on, which is that there's much more of a frame story, and there's the whole iconic thing where every character in her home life is related to a character she encounters in Oz. Like, it's the same actor and supposed to be the same like dream figure. Mm-hmm. And that does not happen in the book at all. I think the book is much more, this is literally another land she traveled to, where the movie's more ambiguous.
In like the later books, her family does just like move to Oz, like as a place. So
yeah. So, and do you think it was a positive, negative, neutral addition to the movie?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to say one way or the other, because I've seen this film probably over 50 times in my life, and so like I really like this film, so it's very iconic to me that it's the whole, oh, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there, kind of like, oh, realizing it's kind of a dream sequence kind of thing, and I've always liked that ending, but it does kind of lend itself to being more like, oh, this is a battle inside the mind kind of thing where you're going to learn something about yourself that you should appreciate home or whatever. And so it becomes a lot more of like a metaphor or kind of a morality tale, which is exactly what he does not want based on his introduction to this book. So reading the book now, I'm like, I like the change because I like the original movie, But if I'm thinking, like, does it go against authorial intent, which we can discuss how much that matters or not, it certainly seems to be, like, almost in the opposite direction.
I think a theme will be that a lot of the changes made for the movie are in pursuit of a more traditional 3-act structure with character development occurring. Because I think those are both things that the book kind of flagrantly forgoes. And you can say to its benefit or not, but...
Well, it's very similar to Alice in Wonderland and how Alice in Wonderland is adapted, and that could be another thing that we talk about later in a later episode, about how it's adapted and how it's changed and altered to kind of fit into kind of the classic 3-act structure that we're very common with, or very familiar with, whereas in the book, it's just a whole bunch of nonsense, one right after another, which I felt a lot kind of with in kind of The Wizard of Oz as well, where it's like, it's kind of got those, they both have kind of the fairy tale things where like you're kind of seeing one small story and then it ends, and then there's another small story and it's kind of like part of this kind of larger world, but like, there's not a lot to kind of lead you through it other than the fact that it's happening to the same people.
Right. And I kind of like that in the book because I think it just feels classic. And it's almost like each chapter, some of them are more load-bearing than others, like relate to the direct plot. But a lot of there's kind of like interstitial ones that are like their own little fairy tale within the fairy tale. Like they all have kind of this like 1, 2, 3 pacing of like repetitive things happening, you know,
like the Queen of the Field Mice.
There's kind of a twist at the end. What
was it, like the Queen of the Field Mice?
Like the Field Mice, or like the Woodman's backstory.
I can't believe they cut that out of the film.
Each character other than Dorothy kind of encountering their like, you know, fated homeland and then being gifted it by the queen, or the witch, I mean. So
she's kind of a queen, but
the other kind of overarching theme that I wanted to talk about, because I think it's just important, is, and it kind of relates to what I was saying about every change they make for the movie is kind of in pursuit of a 3-act structure with a character development, is that all the side plots and side quests, if they are included, because a lot of them are cut, are like the fault of the Wicked Witch of the West in the movie. Like she like possesses the trees that harass them and causes the poppies to be like magically stronger than usual.
I did write down in my notes that I was taking that was like, you know, the Wicked Witch is a lot more active and a lot more present, and you can kind of see her in the background in some shots as like a threat. Whereas like in the book, it's just kind of like, they mention her at the beginning because they're like, here's how the world's set up, and then they don't ever really mention her until they actually go there.
Yeah, and they don't, she's not harassed by them. They don't really have any beef with her, except the Oz, the Great and Powerful, is like, you have to kill her for me to grant your wish. That's like the only reason they even try. And that they keep that to an extent where Oz is like, I need her broomstick, and they're like, well, to get her broomstick, she'd have to die. But they also just have like a personal problem with her, you know, in the movie.
Again, I think that's a lot more in making it kind of very similar to kind of what we kind of expect from movies, where like, and right. This, you know, it's less true back then, but it's more character driven than it is like the villain has to relate to the protagonist in some way, or be connected to them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So those are the two things I wanted to say that aren't necessarily chronological, but I feel like are the kind of the two biggest changes I noticed. Anything like that for you, or do we want to just go in order from now on?
The only thing that's kind of that magnitude is I really do appreciate the fact that this film is, for part of it, sepia toned, and for the other part of it, in color. Where I think that really does kind of help lend itself to kind of just how outwardly Oz is, whereas this place full of color, whereas Kansas is this terrible, terrible state. I've been there, so it's right. It's all sepia toned.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very clever thing, and
there's nothing
to be clear. This is, I know you know this, Cameron, but to make sure our audience says, this was not the first color film by a long shot.
Yeah, But there's just like nothing more iconic to me in this film than her opening the door and then her stepping out into the, Munchkin land.
Yeah, that's crazy because they had to like paint a stunt double sepia toned or something. I remember watching like a behind the scenes view of it.
It also kind of,
but yeah, it's like,
isn't this the reason why they changed it to be ruby slippers? Because they showed up better than silver shoes. They were like, we kind of want to flex some of the colors, which is a good decision.
Yeah, they're sparkly and red. They wanted to show off Technicolor, which was fairly new. Not the first Technicolor movie, but definitely a newer technology. So yeah, and I almost noticed like it's sepia toned, which you associate like black and white or monochrome with earlier movies made around the 30s, but like it's almost consciously looks even earlier than it is. Like it kind of harkens back to like actually silent movies in how it looks, and then kind of leaps forward to color and the super modern Technicolor look. So that helps emphasize it. Even for the audience at the time, it would have seemed dated and then leaped forward in technology.
I wonder if that helps contribute to the myth that like this is the first color film, because like the first part of it seems so much older than the rest.
So old, yeah. But Citizen Kane, if not the exact same year, which I think it was the same year, I mean, that's a better example of what monochrome cinematography looked like at the time, and it's nothing like the opening of this movie. Also, this wasn't super noticeable because I only have stereo speakers, but with the remastered soundtrack that they've had since like the DVD, they also switched from using a mono soundtrack to surround sound once it becomes color, which is like also a cool extra little detail.
I don't think I noticed that, but that's interesting. It's nice that like they care enough to like continue to kind of adapt it as they're changing even just the format of how you watch it.
Yeah. This is one of the movies for sure that every version that's ever existed has had a lot of love and care put into restoring it.
I also just really like Munchkin Land because like you can see at what point in the background where it stops being a real set and starts being just kind of a backdrop, and you can see kind of like, I don't know, there's something so, and this is weird to me, like there's something just so nostalgic about that kind of look of film, of like how like
backdrops, how
much it still requires you to kind of suspend your disbelief in the same way that you have to kind of suspend your disbelief for any kind of like any kind of like real life theater production, where like you recognize that the set's not real, but you force yourself to imagine it's there, which you don't see a lot in modern movies where everything's like CGI, or because I can picture this movie being made today, and if you look at the behind the scenes thing, well, they'd have like a whole bunch of green screens right behind them and on the floor.
Right.
And they would just digitally insert everything, and it'd probably look more realistic than what we have now, or what was there, but it would just miss something.
Yeah, I mean, we literally have Wicked, which came out a couple months ago, and definitely that's how it is. Like, there was a lot of impressive production design and set design on Wicked, because you can see behind the scenes photos of that, and then the actual image comes out flat and weird because everything is overexposed weirdly, and not to blame green screens entirely, because lots of great movies are mostly filmed on green screen, but there is a touch to it that, and like, unlike some, like Star Wars uses a lot of painted backdrops, for example, but it doesn't want you to notice. They're pretty realistic. Wizard of Oz, you can tell they're painted, and you would have been able to tell they were painted when it came out. It's not like modern resolution is what revealed that. So it is nostalgic and makes it more fairy tale book. So
yeah, that and the house and the Twister's a miniature kind of house that they're kind of just spinning around and twirling.
And like, obviously, all the characters that she encounters in the book, the Cowardly Lion is an actual lion, like supposed to look and walk like a lion. And it's a dude in a fursuit in the movie. So, like, obviously they know.
Still looks
It's all
better
realistic
than Cats.
What? Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, the Cowardly Lion's a lot more cartoonish in, like, I feel like he's almost trying to, like, pretend to be a Popeye character. Just kind of, like, in how he moves. And, like, walks around.
Well,
I'm trying to think when Popeye came
The
out.
Wizard of Oz kind of first became a, like, phenomenon when it was a musical in, like, 1902 or 06 or something like that. Like a stage musical.
Mm-hmm.
And that version has completely different songs and writing. Like, it's kind of lost to time. But it apparently became a phenomenon, partially based on, like, the comedic performance of, like, some of the sidekicks, like the Tin Man and Scarecrow, I think. So I think the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Lion are kind of channeling that legacy, maybe, in this movie. They're giving very, like...
I mean...
Especially the Lion, very over-the-top comedy performances.
Which I guess kind of also lends itself into kind of thinking about it in terms of, like... You mentioned silent films for the first part, where, like, I think of... Especially with kind of how the Scarecrow moves, or the Tin Man, I guess, when he's kind of doing his kind of leans back and forth. That feels very Charlie Chaplin-esque, where, like, he is, like, you know, you're really focused on kind of the movements of everything. You're not really focused on what they're saying, because they're not saying anything during this because they're just doing dancing or whatever. But, like, you're really focused on kind of how they are in relation to the rest of the set.
Going backwards, because the opening credits credit all these actors by name, and then the Munchkins, which was odd.
Now I understand why one of them hung themselves. And yes, I do recognize that that's a fake story that's not real.
That is crazy, because on the Blu-ray now, we have high enough resolution that it's, like, so obviously a bird. Like, you can literally see the definition of the wings and the neck.
Well, they've
Although, I think the hoax is that they changed it, but...
Well, they edited it to make it more obvious, because I think in the original release, it's, like, kind of hard to see the bird wing and kind of see kind of its, like, color.
I don't think they edited it. I think VHS was low enough resolution that it was just easy to... It looked like a smudge in the background. But once they re-photographed the film elements, because they went back to the original and everything for the Blu-ray and the 4K, it was just way sharper to begin with. But the hoax is that they changed it, like, actively. It was a suicidal Munchkin, and they changed it to a bird. Apparently, they are actually the lead performances of the Munchkins were a European troupe known as the Singer Midgets, and then all the others were just, like, there was a national talent scouting for dwarf actors to fill in the ranks.
Well, it beats out Charlie and the Chocolate
A few
Factory.
of them are just children.
Yeah. I do like the Munchkin song very much. Like, there's something so great about them being so happy that this person's dead.
Yeah. The scene that establishes Oz's, like, parallel character, the, like, snake oil salesman that she encounters, I just thought it was interesting that the, like, fortune telling he gives her is, like, if you pay attention, it's, like, a very accurate and classic example of cold reading. Mm-hmm. Which is when you, like, suggest just enough generic information to a person that they volunteer more specific information, and then you agree with them and you look like a genius. So I think you're supposed to get the sense, like, if you're not paying that much attention, you would get the sense that maybe he really is kind of telling the fortune. But if you're aware of that technique, it's very obvious that he's a charlatan.
I mean, even
interesting.
Later on, when they go in to, like, read his crystal ball or whatever, he, like, reaches through her purse or her basket to, like, find more information out about her. So it's very clearly, like, I mean, again, if you're not paying attention, you probably don't notice him, like, kind of rifle through her bag or whatever. But it's very clearly like, oh, this person is a charlatan. And it does set up for later on, you know, a perfect mirror for the Wizard of Oz in the actual Oz place. It is interesting because it's like, it's almost like revealing the kind of secret of the book beforehand, where it's like this the wizard's not really all that powerful, or any power at all. So it's interesting that they decide to kind of like set it up there. I don't know how. I mean, this is a classic book, but I don't actually know how popular it was when this movie was released.
I think it was popular.
I mean, probably since
again,
they made a movie about it.
The stage musical was kind of a phenomenon first, and it had actually had multiple movie, like even silent movie adaptations. Like, this is not the first Wizard of Oz movie by. It's not even the like second or third,
but it is the best.
They, in the book, we're going to get into the deep Oz lore here. There are 2 good witches in the story of the book. The Good Witch of the North is the one who blesses Dorothy at the start of her journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then later in the book, they are tasked with finding Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. And they made that into one character in the movie. I don't think it matters all that much.
I mean, it's probably a good thing that they
sense.
didn't have both. But, like, since they
but real Oz heads know. So.
Yeah.
Also,
that's one of the things I didn't actually know. Like, I knew vaguely about Oz lore, and I knew that, like, the witches were more complicated than what was presented in the book a little bit. But I didn't actually know that.
The Munchkins are not all short. I don't know if the book actually specifically mentions this fact, but in Oz lore, they can just be any size.
Sounds like inconsistent world building to me.
That might be established in a later edition to the lore. But.
We did not read all like 20 Oz books that exist.
No. He actually was releasing like not one a year, but something close to that. And then another lady took over once he stopped. Like it's insane. There's so many. We've already kind of mentioned it, but in the book, the Tin Man has like a gruesome backstory where he like one by one chops off all his limbs and replaces them with tin until he's a human that has become made of tin. But he was just a Tin Man from the start in the movie.
Again, I don't know why they cut it out. Like, I can't imagine why children wouldn't like that. Why the Hays Code wouldn't allow that.
One thing that does kind of irk me, and maybe it irks me less in this than it did in Wicked, is that the Emerald City is actually green.
In the movie?
In the book, you're forced to put on green tinted glasses when you go to the Emerald City, and it's just a normal city that you're looking at through green glasses.
Yeah, but in the movie, it's not really like explicitly stated that like the wizard helped build Emerald City, whereas it is in the book.
Right.
And so it makes sense that the city that he helps build is a charlatan just like him, whereas in the movie, it almost feels like the wizard just kind of plopped down into Emerald City, and that's why they made him the wizard. Which I think is how it also happens in Oz the Great and Powerful, the 2014.
The Sam Raimi, pretty bad. Yeah. I saw that in theaters, haven't seen it since, don't remember anything about it. Mila Kunis is in it.
Same.
Yeah, I just think it's such a like funny and kind of cynical detail.
Well, it's like one of those...
It makes sense.
Subtle things that like... Because I knew that fact I did know that fact before I read this book, that like, in the book, it's not actually in Emerald City. They have to wear glasses, because I think I saw it in a YouTube video at one point. It's one of those things that when you're reading it, it seems like it's something that's very easy to not immediately notice if you're like a younger child, or you're not like super paying attention to things, where it's like, oh, they're wearing glasses or whatever, and they're green or whatever. That's because like everything else is green, so why wouldn't it be green? And then it's when they're kind of leaving Oz that you see that, her dress is now white and not green, that you're like, there's something not quite right here.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it really matters for this movie or the themes it's conveying. Sorry to bring it up again, because I know it's based on a completely different book and not the one we're talking about, but like I think it would have made a lot of sense to include in Wicked, because Wicked has a lot of themes of like propaganda and mass population control. So I think it was a loss that they didn't include it there.
I do a little bit want to talk about the wizard in the book versus the wizard in the movie. So what
about it?
Well, in the book, there's like 4 different. Like they each individually go and see the wizard. They don't all go at the same time. So each time they go there, they get a different kind of form that kind of mimics something about them or kind of is relating to them in some way.
I think that's an example of what I was talking about with like, there's a lot of individual fairy tales within the book. Like that's a classic fairy tale pacing of like one character, one form, one day, very methodical and rhythmic almost.
Is it the Scarecrow who gets to see him as a busty lady? I think so.
Let's crack.
I think the Scarecrow goes first and he sees a woman. Well, it almost feels like in the book, and this is kind of just something that I noticed, that like it almost feels like the forms are kind of mismatched to kind of what the other person might be worried about. Like, because I think the Scarecrow sees the woman, and you would think that would go with the Tin Man who's supposed to be looking for a heart because he wants to date somebody or whatever. And the lion talks to a fireball.
The Scarecrow goes first, and he sees a beautiful lady, but I don't know where you got busty from.
Well, it says beautiful, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the drawing of her is not particularly busty.
Well, like I can read.
She has wings, and then
so like when I was reading this, I was like, this is giving me serious like, and I know it's like wrong to say it this way, and I hate TikTok for saying it, for presenting it to the rest of the world this way, that like biblically accurate angel kind of things, where it's like there's kind of these weird kind of non-human shapes or whatever, like it's a ball of fire, or it's a giant head or whatever. Yeah. Where it almost feels like...
Well, the ball of fire is very Moses and the burning bush already.
As well.
Like actually biblical.
And I was thinking of this and like, is this supposed to be, or is one way you can read this was like a critique of religion where like they don't really solve any problems. They have to wait for outsiders to solve them because their religion has kind of taught them to kind of just sit there and wait for like God to help them, who's the wizard who's not really there, who's not really a wizard.
Yeah. But there's almost that sort of, it's kind of a moral of the Book of Mormon, like if that is what it's going for, their belief in Oz still propelled them to a solution and to, a better outcome. So.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about it. It's just...
And like, Oz is revealed to be a charlatan, but then he's immediately like, but I am a pretty good guy, and all the party members of the book are friends with him from then on out.
Well, it almost feels like a kind of like critique of like, and this would not make sense historically, but like, it's a critique of like evangelical beliefs where like everything's totally literal. You should believe everything in the Bible as perfectly as, it's written or whatever. It's like actually happened that way. And it goes for a more kind of interpretive kind of belief system.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of, that's where I was whenever I was reading The Wizard. That's like the major part of the book that stood out to me. I was like, oh, this feels like, opiate of the masses kind of thing where like,
it does like almost
tricked
feel
everybody into like seeing things his way by making them do things a certain way by wearing the glasses. So it's like he can prolong how long he's in power.
It does almost feel like the skeleton key to the book. Like if I could just figure out why the Scarecrow sees a lady, the Tin Man sees the beast, and the lion sees the fireball, I could figure out the hidden meaning of it all.
Doesn't it seem to you, and this is the part where the key doesn't make sense to me, where like it makes more sense for the lion to see the scary creature,
to see the beast,
and for like the Tin Man to see the lady, and for Scarecrow to see the giant ball of fire.
Because he wants a heart. Yeah.
Like,
it does.
Something being like where like he's like.
That's why it's like, why don't they see it? That must be the key to the secrets of the book.
It's almost like showcasing early on where like the wizard's a charlatan, because if he was all this great and powerful, he would know kind of, and he's trying to scare them off or whatever, be kind of like, I'm Oz, the great and terrible. Like he would know to kind of, if he was all powerful or all knowing, he would know to match the correct creature to the right person.
Yeah. And Dorothy just sees them as the face, like in the movie.
Yeah, it's a giant head.
There's like a whole like King of the Forest dance number in the movie where like the lion actively wants, like he's like, if I had my courage, I'd be King of the Forest, which I think in the movie is mostly like metaphorical because like the lion as a species is King of the Forest. Mm-hmm. But in the book, he like lucks into being king of the forest. Like he doesn't bring it up at all. And then he's given the title because he's like courageous now and willing to defeat a spider.
Although he's a coward for waiting until like the spider's asleep. I mean, it's one of those things where like
True.
Throughout this entire book, there's like, and throughout the movie as well, there's like several moments where like the Scarecrow clearly shows that he has brains already by coming up with plans and telling them what to do and solving problems. And
well, that's why all the wizard solutions are just like little scraps of paper and fake hearts, because that's the moral, is like you had all these things already, you know.
Yeah. Although they were slightly different in the book and in the movie. Because, like,
yeah,
they feel more mean-spirited in the book than they do in the movie.
Maybe.
Because it's like, in the Scarecrow kind of thing, he gets, like, nails shoved into his head or whatever. And it's like, later on they comment how, like, when they fall on him to stop them from, like, crashing down, they're like, we made sure not to fall on his head because we could not stand getting a pin in our butt or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Taking a big tangent here, but the other thing I always notice about the movie and the book, they have this problem in different ways, is when I think of The Wizard of Oz, I think of Dorothy being sent to Oz, making friends with the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion like in a row, and then going to the Emerald City. And then I kind of just think of it as ending there. Like, that's like the load-bearing, like in popular culture, that's The Wizard of Oz. But that stops by like less than halfway through both the book and the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where like, despite being built up as kind of like this superior villain in the book, in the movie, the first post of the book, like where she's like seen in several scenes, she constantly taunts the protagonist. They don't spend an awful lot of time like actually like dealing with the witch in any way. It's always like, I mean, even in, I mean, in the book version, it feels a lot more like, oh, this is like a confrontation that I could feel this character having, whereas in the movie, it feels almost like an accident that they defeat the witch, which, I mean, it is an accident, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, in the book, she gets frustrated and is like angry and just like throws the water at her, but doesn't know that it will kill her. Mm-hmm. In the movie, it's actively an accident. She's just trying to like put out the Scarecrow and accidentally gets water on the witch. Also, the book, like a couple pages ahead of time, is like the witch always tried to avoid water.
Yeah, she's like, I would steal those shoes when Dorothy took a bath, but I don't get in your water. I've not bathed in years.
They only set it up a couple pages ahead of time, not any time before that. The movie doesn't set it up at all. It's just like, she got hit by water. She's melting.
I mean, it's one of those things that like I feel like I never really questioned in the movie.
Yeah. It makes as much sense as
everything else.
Man made of tin being real, so.
But like in the book, it feels very much like the kind of sentences that you get in fairy tales where it's like they come up with the solution and it works or whatever, or they know the solution because someone told them it works or whatever. Where it's very much
I think the storyteller of the fairy tale, or in this case L. Frank Baum, the actual author, knew how he wanted the witch to die and then, seeded a slight hint as to how it would happen earlier on after he had already decided it.
I'm just trying to think of, is there a better place you could have, like, if I was writing this book, is there a better place that I would have, like, brought up that information? I guess you could have had it whenever Oz was doing anything, but, like, you still don't want Oz to actually be helpful in any way. Like, meaningfully helpful.
Bach could have said it at the beginning.
Bach?
Oh,
Bach.
Munchkin.
Oh, yeah. It's weird, because there's a character in Elden Ring named Bach, who now I look at it in a new light having read this book.
It's also crazy because, again, in Wicked, Bach is like the Ethan Slater character that becomes the Scarecrow or the Tin Man, one of the two. But in the book, Bach is in one chapter and then the Scarecrow's in the very next one. So they couldn't be the same guy.
What do you mean?
It's like they didn't even read the book.
What do you mean, Josh? You never see them in the same place twice at the same time.
That's true.
I mean, I feel like the book has this weird way of, like, it, like, justifies everything it does in like a few sentences, where it feels like it's almost like A, trying too hard, but also B, like not giving a satisfactory answer to any kind of like modern audience, which I know it's not writing to a modern audience, it's writing to, when it was written. But like, when it's like, yeah, the Scarecrow is like, oh, I was born just 2 days ago. That's why I don't know anything. When I was reading that, I was like, is that really kind of like a necessary addition? Like, do we need to know the birth of the Scarecrow to like understand this character?
Yeah, it was interesting. Both times I've read it, when the Scarecrow comes up, I've been like, wow, very like tabula rasa. Like, man, he's really getting into the philosophy of having a mind.
I mean, that's what Glinda says at the end.
But to go back to noticing that, like, the part that's like iconic of the story ends by halfway through, especially in the book, the part that's iconic from the movie ends like within the first half, and then the rest of it's like extra little side quests that you don't hear of in the movie. Like, they kill the witch with like 100 pages left.
It's like 80 pages left, but yes, I do understand your point. I mean, it's one of those things there's like, I can see why they cut this from the film, because it makes a much tighter narrative where the witch is your sole bad guy that you're trying to solve the problem for, or is like your main right. Antagonist, not necessarily main problem. And that leads you to the main solution, which ends there. And I mean, you kind of get this in the movie, because like the whole impetus for like the second or the third of the book, I suppose, is that after Oz gets in the balloon and it flies away without Dorothy, she's like, well, I don't really know what to do. And I'm like, well, you should go see Glinda, the Good Witch of the South. Whereas in the movie, what happens is that all happens, and then Glinda just kind of shows up and is like, you could go home anytime you want to, just click your heels. Where it's like, we still have like
which
a third
does
of
almost make a little more sense, because we've established that Glinda can teleport wherever she wants to in a bubble. So
what an iconic pink bubble. That's how human travel should be. That's why Meet the Robinsons is a good film, because they travel by bubble.
I thought it was funny how, for this, like, yes, the big story points and characters are there, but this is not that faithful of a literal adaptation of the book, as we've covered. So I thought it was very funny whenever they reveal that Oz is a charlatan, they keep that he's a humbug, like that specific vocabulary word. In the book and in the movie, they're like, you're a humbug.
Apparently, they were supposed to have like a musical song at that point where he was like giving them their like gifts or whatever, and they cut that out. They were like, it sounds better when it's in like prose and not song. And I was like, I swear, these 1939 people, I wanted this song. It's like the same lyrics or whatever, same words, but it's like not set to rhythm.
We've kind of gotten to the end of my line by line notes on the movie. Do you have any that we haven't touched on?
I have Oz as a labor-free paradise in the movie, because they, get off that.
They got all those people like wearing Oz t-shirts, which are allegedly the first t-shirts ever.
Really?
Well, not first graphic tees ever. And give them like hairdos and things.
They were like, wow, let's cut off their sleeves. It's a whole new shirt. Yeah, but like they have it in the song right before it, which is kind of the part where it's like the song doesn't mesh well with what's happening in the scene, where it's like, we wake up at 12, work starts at 1, we take an hour for lunch, and then we're done at 2 or whatever. So it's like all they do is go on lunch, which is great, and that's not in the book. The book is like, it's a town just like any other or whatever, where they sell things. It's very much like, I mean, it kind of lends itself to kind of being like, this town's not any more special than any other town that she's like visited. It's just not any different from like Munchkinville, Munchkinland. But I was sad it was just the big floating head by the Oz, because I really wanted to see the monsters, and not the lady.
That would have been a cool thing to see. So, kind of my overall takeaway that I wrote down after watching the movie was, from like what I've said from the beginning, I understand the cuts they made in service of like a coherent 3-act plot with, reasonable character development for like the hero and villain. I think what you lose in that is a lot of the sense of Oz as like a place, like a world building place with like lore and history. Whereas in the movie, it's ambiguously maybe just Dorothy's dream the entire time.
Well, and I'll give credit to Baum here in this regard, where I think that like he does a very good job of setting up enough things about the world that I can see him making, it still boggles the mind that he makes 20 books after this or whatever. But like, I think it's actually only 10. But I can see enough.
It almost kind of has that like that Star Wars magic of just like sprinkling in enough random
proper
words
nouns
and names that you're like intrigued, even though they probably meant nothing when they were originally written.
Yeah, it is interesting in that regard, and I think that's where like the only book that I can compare this to reasonably well that I think really kind of matches it is Alice in Wonderland. And I feel like Alice in Wonderland does not achieve the same kind of concepts of like, here's interesting facts about the world, let's run wild with it in the next kind of books or whatever. Because I feel like when I read Alice in Wonderland, a whole lot of it is like, this just seems like a whole bunch of non sequiturs. And to a degree in Wizard of Oz, they're also kind of non sequiturs, but like, it feels a lot more like...
Yeah. But it's almost like the non sequiturs in Oz are like, it makes you curious about the deeper, like, information behind the society rather than
we didn't
just
even talk about
random.
the land of China dolls or whatever, where it's like, this only happens in the book. It's like as they're going to the south, where they go across this like little town that's just full of China dolls that are alive for whatever reason, and they're like, if you were really kind to us, you would not be here, not force us to break our cow's legs or whatever. It's just like...
Yeah. The big thing that gets me is like at the beginning of the movie when, well, not the beginning of the movie, but the Wicked Witch is wicked in the book because she has the golden cap, which allows you to use the winged monkeys to your purpose 3 times. And one of those uses is for her to just like enslave Quadling country. And that's a big thing.
They are Winkies. Quadlings are in the south.
I thought she enslaved Quadling country with the cap.
She enslaved the west or the east, which is she enslaved the west, which is Winky country.
Well, either way, you don't get any of that, why she's wicked, or you don't hear about the Winkies or the Quadlings or whatever the fourth group of people is. Munchkins are the third in the movie. And I feel like that's kind of one of those details that's really what kind of like expands Oz in my mind. Like, is this whole region, the Quadlings, that, whereas you only kind of get, if you watch the movie, you would assume the Munchkins are the citizenry of Oz and there's not others,
Well, I forget if I guess in Oz, they're kind of, they're like average size or whatever. But for some reason, whenever I think back to it, I always just picture them as all kind of Munchkin height. And I don't know if it's just because that's what I pictured as a child, and that's what I always picture. But it does almost seem like the movie relies on like the viewer's understanding of witches as inherently bad to like justify its like place as her having been the villain. Whereas in the book, you at least get a little bit more like, oh, she's bad because she's enslaved this country. She abuses her power, she torments them, she uses them as slaves, everything. So you get a lot more of like, here are things that she's done that justifies you murdering her, even though Dorothy's like, whenever the wizard tells her to, is like, I can't imagine doing that. And Oz is like, well, she's actually pretty bad when you think about it.
Yeah, there's a lot more like, this is something that RPG book I mentioned earlier is really good at capturing. There's a lot more like political power plays happening in the book, even in this one, but definitely in the sequels. Because there's like brief summaries of like in the back of my copy of the book, there's like a timeline of Oz releases and like what the general plot is. And there's always like some plot point that's like, this guy becomes ruler of the East and this person takes over the North. And
Yeah. I mean, the book does mention the fact that, like, the Wicked Witch used the flying monkeys to, like, drive Oz out of the West country so that she could become the Wicked Witch of the West or whatever. And, again, this ties into the fact that he's kind of a charlatan who can't really kind of do anything to kind of stop her. Where he's, like, this powerless figure who's, like, is actually beaten back and back again until he kind of just kind of exists in, like, one room in the city because he can't leave the city because if he does, everyone's going to realize he's a fraud.
Right.
So I can kind of see some of those beginnings of those political undertones in kind of the book version where it's like your political leader is not as great as they think they are. Somewhat complicated by the fact that all the good witches who rule the North and the South are also like the best people ever. I don't know if that changes in the books that come later.
Yeah. Are we ready to rate this and score it?
That's fine with me, I think. I don't really have anything else to really say because we kind of already talked about it being all kind of a dream kind of thing. I do like the ambiguity of, like, what happened to Mrs. Gulch, who's the Kansas version of the Wicked Witch of the West. What kind of happened to her? It's like we never really get a resolution to that plot where, like, she wants to, put Toto down.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that is weird. Like, it's the inciting drama of the beginning, and then it just never really comes up again.
Like, I can't imagine that a mere tornado would cause her to change her ways. The only way that I imagine this movie, like, actually, like, ending after this final credits, ending in a good way, is if she had somehow died in the tornado and therefore was not a problem anymore.
I was gonna say, I almost wonder if, like, her dream did impact reality and, Miss Gulch has, like, died of a disease in real life because the Wicked Witch died in Oz.
Well, you see her transform into the witch as she's traveling to Oz, and you're like, this is after she hits her head, so you're like, this is probably part of the dream sequence, but it's like, maybe she was actually swept up by the tornado, and that's what, like, her frazzled brain saw and transformed into the witch. But I am good to give this film a rating from our
so where are we at
scale.
Where are we at on the difficulty here?
I mean, I feel like this because it's set up kind of like fairy tales and it's very defiant of, like, a standard 3-act structure, which is how most Hollywood films have operated for a very long time, kind of doing and kind of what audiences expect. It feels to me like it has to kind of rank as at least a Mario.
Yeah, I think...
I mean, just simply from the fact that you have to change so much of the book to, like, get it into
the
a workable...
books. This is not a bad feature of the book, but it would probably be almost incoherent as a feature-length film. I'm not sure it would be any good. So I would agree with that. And then I think I would be shocked if you had any other opinion than that this completes the Mario game.
Oh yeah, this 100% completes the Mario game. Like, they are two widely different experiences, but, like, I can't say that, like, I leave the movie unsatisfied after having read the book. Because I've seen the movie many, many times, but I watched it again after I read the book, and I was like, I see the changes they've made, but I'm always like, these are good changes to make it into, like, a film that actually works, and you're making decisions about characters and tying things more closely to characters, and I'm like, this is just the best way of doing this kind of film, where, like, yeah, you're changing the source material, but, like, I can't think of a better way of doing this movie than what we have. Yeah,
I agree. It's a very different movie from the source material, but everything it changes, it makes sense. And I would say it completes it not just because it's a great movie on its own, but I think it captures the heart of the book. Like, the overall, it feels like a fairy tale. It feels whimsical and innocent, and all the qualities of the book that make it so enjoyable to read. I would be very interested in seeing a more faithful adaptation of the book on screen. And it's almost a little frustrating to me that like the movie is so iconic that when people make new Wizard of Oz movies, it's just a retelling of the movie and they never go back to the book. But
yeah, this is kind of a case where I think that the source material has been eclipsed by the adaptation.
That's definitely true in pop culture. I'd have to think on it whether I mean, the book I think is wonderful. But the movie is definitely, I think the movie is more, objectively, it's more impactful and relevant in its artistic medium than the book is. That at least is true.
Yeah, probably.
Any last words on The Wonderful Wizard of Oz?
Just one thing. You mentioned kind of how fairy tale-esque it kind of, or the book kind of feels. And I feel like almost like the set design and the costumes and kind of the bright colors, which is something that you don't really see, especially today in kind of movies and even musicals today. Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Wicked is not like, I mean, it's colorful, but it's like kind of a very kind of muted colorful kind of thing, where it's not as like bright and cheery as like this film is. Or I think that kind of lends itself to kind of feeling kind of very fairy tale-esque and kind of whimsical.
Being bright and cheery.
Yeah. Like the costume design.
I agree. I think that wraps us up on The Wizard of Oz. Small note going forward, we will be slowing down the pace of the podcast, and that's just so we can bring more complex or longer books into the conversation, and also maybe more research behind each thing we cover. So it might be a few weeks before you see the next episode rather than 2 like usual. But if you are following along with us, the next work will be Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by an unknown poet, and the film adaptation The Green Knight.
Well, okay. So I guess the one they're next going to see is Star Wars, correct?
Well, Star Wars will come out next, but then Oz will come out after it.
Yeah, I know. But the way you phrase it made it seem like the one that they were going to see next, or listen to next, was going to be Gawain and the Green Knight.
Yeah, because Star Wars will come out next, and then Oz, and then when they listen to Oz, I'll talk about the Green Knight, which will come out next.
Okay. That makes more sense. Got all this part out. I'm sorry. I've had a very tall Moscow Mule throughout this recording, so I mean, I guess you can leave this part in because I'm explaining it, but like, my brain was very slow at that processing thing. I was like, wait, they're going to hear this part first. But that's not true. Well, that's all. As always, we'd like to give credit to those that made this podcast possible, those that worked on the adaptation. A great big thanks for making the world just a little bit more artful. To our listeners, we thank you for tuning in. Again, as Josh said correctly, despite my protest, join us next week as we investigate Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.